Hello, everyone. I'm Courtney Burt-Reed, Associate Director of Marketing at MIT Sloan Executive Education. I'm so excited because today we're bringing you a LinkedIn Live event called Making Innovation Work for Your Organization. Please leave a comment letting us know where in the world you're joining us from. We're actually between the four of us speakers today across 3 time zones, I believe. So let us know what time zone you're joining us from, and we'd love to hear from you a little bit more about you and your organization. If you have any questions, you can leave a comment on this post, and we will do our best to address relevant questions at the end of the discussion. It's my pleasure to introduce our MIT faculty today. We have Phil Budden, Fiona Murray, and Kate Isaacs. Dr. Phil Budden is a senior lecturer at MIT's Sloan Management School in the TIES Technological Innovation, Entrepreneurship, and Strategy Group. He focuses on innovation around the world, especially corporate innovation in large organizations. He's the faculty lead for the new Innovation Executive Academy. More on that to come. We're also joined by Professor Dame Fiona Murray. She's the Associate Dean of Innovation at the MIT Sloan School of Management and the William Porter Professor of Entrepreneurship. She's the Faculty Director of MIT's Innovation Headquarters and also Faculty Director of MIT's Center for Development and Entrepreneurship. And Kate Isaacs is here today as well. She's a senior lecturer at the MIT Sloan School of Management. She draws on design thinking, system dynamics, and developmental psychology to help leaders create conditions for collective intelligence, agile performance, and transformative change. Kate Isaacs is a scholar, teacher, and strategy advisor who designs organizations and stakeholder partnerships for people and places to thrive. They all teach in the upcoming Innovation Executive Academy, happening April 29th to May 8th, 2025. So that is super exciting. We're going to talk more about that later. And I'm so excited to get through my introductions of all these wonderful people and turn it over to Phil to lead the discussion today. He's going to ask our wonderful, amazing faculty some questions. He's going to weigh in himself, and then we'll turn it over and answer some audience questions. So without further ado, Dr. Phil Budden.
Excellent. Courtney, thank you so much for that kind introduction. And Fiona and Kate, both of you, thank you so much for joining me today to talk to these participants. And thank you, participants, for joining us today or watching this recording later. We have an hour together where we're going to talk a little bit about innovation. And then, as Courtney said, we're going to talk a bit about the Executive Academy. So I'm going to give my 2 interviewees here a chance to say quick hellos as well. I'll start off with Fiona. So Professor Dame Fiona Murray, thank you so much for taking time, given your many responsibilities. Would you like to say hello to everybody?
Yes, thank you. I'm really happy to be here joining you, and it's wonderful to see so many participants already. I see people from across the United States, as far away as Sydney in Australia, Finland, Lima, Peru, and including some of the places that we've had a chance to work with our regional ecosystem program, as well as places in the world where there are large organizations that we've had the pleasure to work with. And so I just want to welcome everybody. Thank you for being with us.
Excellent. And thank you, Fiona. And I think you entered in the chat that you're back there in Boston, Brookline, Massachusetts. So it's early morning for you.
That's correct.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Fiona. And Kate, thank you so much for joining us. Looking out the window, it looks dark behind you. So tell us a bit about yourself and where you're beaming in from today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Phil. It's wonderful to be here. I am in Colorado, where I'm joining you from our family ski vacation, and I'm just delighted to be here today. Welcome to everyone from around the world. I see friends from Europe, from China, India, Abu Dhabi. So we have a couple of folks from Peru. So welcome. We have a whole span of time zones from around the world, and I'm so excited to be here with you. A cup of coffee, I hope, for those of you who are joining us early or quite late, and look forward to diving in.
Wonderful. Well, Kate, thank you for joining us at dark early out there in the Rocky Mountains. And participants, thank you for sharing where you are from. As you can see, we believe that this innovation topic is very important, hence we're joining you from all different time zones. I'm in London just before lunch, but also that this is truly a global phenomenon. So we're so pleased to have so many people from around the world joining us live. And hopefully if you are watching this recorded, you will also get to learn something about global perspectives. Now, I'm going to turn first to Professor Fiona Murray. As you heard in the introduction, not only is she the Dean of Innovation and the Professor of Entrepreneurship and all kinds of things, but I'm just curious as to what we mean by this innovation thing. And Fiona, I was thinking about having the participants who are writing in the side there, whether we might ask them what they think. Is that okay?
I think we should do that. I think we should ask everybody what innovation means to you. And when you and the leaders in your organization say they want innovation, what do they normally mean? And then perhaps we can talk to you about how we use that definition and how we'll use it in the course of the academy.
Definitely. Well, thank you for that. So yes, please, participants, do type into the chat what you mean or think about with innovation. And let me just reassure you, there is no monopoly on wisdom on this. We really are intrigued to hear what you as executives and leaders think innovation means, whether it's from your personal experience, from your reading, from your professional background. And just to reassure you, while we will share with you MIT's definition of innovation shortly, which Professor Fiona Murray worked on for MIT, we have no monopoly of wisdom. And one of the key things about leadership for innovation is coming up with an authentic definition that works for you personally, but also works for your organization. So please throw out some concepts as to what you think they are. And Chad has chipped in first. And so I just encourage people from around the world to do this. We do this around the world. And as you're typing in and Fiona's reading your remarks, let me just say, we teach this approach to innovation globally. Both because we have executives tapping in globally to live events like this, but also coming to MIT, but also because we have an international program called REAP, where we work with regions around the world. So this approach turns out to be very important because it can mean slightly different things in slightly different locations. So let me just have a first glance. Gosh, the comments are flowing in quickly. Fiona, have any caught your eye?
Absolutely. So we've got things that are different or new with respect to ideas. We've got solving business problems or solving the unsolvable problem in a new way. I think Chad shared that with us. I particularly like that one. Juan talks about new ideas and technologies to gain competitive advantage. Jennifer talks about permission to take action with new ideas. I really like that. Sort of, it suggests an organizational context because we don't always get to do the innovation that we want to do. Methods to deliver ingenious solutions, I think Felix mentions, and so that I think is particularly important. And then Ionis is going to require that it's something that changes people's lives to the better, not just a new way of doing something unless it has improving benefits. So lots, I think, of really important commentary here. And the thing that I want to sort of stress is the way that we have found it useful to define it at MIT is arguing that innovation is the process of taking ideas from inception to impact. So that, as you'll hear, is quite a short definition, the process of taking ideas from inception to impact. And so if I sort of unpack that just a little bit, I'm going to start at the end and say, why did we choose to use the word impact? Well, we did that because we want this to be a definition that you can use, whether you're in the public or private sector, whether you're in a large global corporation or a startup, or whether you're in a not-for-profit, or some other type of organization. And so what that means is that when you're doing an innovation project, you get to decide for you and for your team what sort of impact you're looking for. Now, it might be that it's profitability, it might be annual recurring revenues, it might be margins, but it could also be, for example, impact on the health and well-being of your patients if you're doing this in a hospital setting. It might be the efficiency of use of people and personnel if you're, say, in a peacekeeping or military setting. It might be, so you can think about, and for a university, it might be the effectiveness of our education. And so we can really think about that end goal of impact. And I think it's important for us to have a direction that we set off in when we're doing innovation. We don't always get there, and it doesn't always mean and there are sometimes unexpected and positive things that happen along the way. If I get right back to the beginning, an idea, what's that? It's not just a sort of a moment of invention. We think of it as a match between a problem and a solution. And so we're looking to solve existing really difficult, unsolvable problems. in new ways. And sometimes we're thinking about taking new solutions and asking, can they do something new? Can they actually solve new problems? And so we're thinking about problems and solutions sort of along degrees of novelty, difficulty, risk. But we want to incorporate all of those in a thing that's not what we would call business as usual, which is just sort of running the business or running the organization. And then the last thing I think I'll say before I hand back over is it is a process. So what this suggests is that the kinds of people who are really good at that early, very messy stage of innovation are not going to be the same people who are really good at taking those innovations, those ideas, and starting to scale them and deploy them so that they can be adopted by large numbers of individuals and have a really transformative impact. And so by having this process definition, we can both manage this really messy activity, but we can also remind ourselves that we need different kinds of skill sets to be included at various stages of the journey for maximum effectiveness. So I'll leave it there.
Excellent. Fiona, thank you for reviewing all the various comments, which I've had a chance to look at. They are remarkable. And thank you for giving us that MIT overview. And Fiona had to play a key role as a senior leader here at MIT in coming up a definition of innovation for MIT. And one of the jobs for you as leaders out there, whether you're in the C-suite or the frontline leaders for innovation, is finding what innovation means authentically for your organization. A quick gloss. First of all, the thing that struck me was that in MIT's definition of innovation, we don't mention the word technology. We love technology. We are tech nerds, been working on AI for 70 odd years, but we don't put technology in there by itself because innovation is more than just technology. There's a great interest in AI, by which most people mean generative AI at the moment. But then innovation is so much more, because to actually have it deliver impact requires personal leadership. And that's why we've got Kate here, is the leadership and the human dimensions are so important to this. One of the things that struck me looking at the various comments out there, this is what I love working with leaders and executives like you, is technology was not first and foremost. You realized that the new technology solutions were a key part of the idea, but by themselves, they were not enough. It does actually require management and leadership to have the implementation and adoption of those technologies to lead to innovation impact. So thank you for that, Fiona. Did you see any questions coming in that you wanted to pick up in response to your opening remarks?
I mean, I saw a couple, and I don't know whether, Kate, you've seen any as well. Bruce asked how many individuals operating at board level are actually qualified or experts at managing innovation. Bruce, I think that's a really good question. I think it depends on what we mean by qualified. When we have more people from the board coming to our Innovation Academy, then the world will be a better place. What I would say is that there are obviously leaders at board and C-suite level who have tremendous experience at managing innovation. But it's also true that I think that the challenges of managing innovation have massively increased over the last several years and the last decades. And so that means that we are always in a continuous sort of learning journey. And typically, particularly when we increasingly are seeking innovation from outside our organizations, often from the innovation and entrepreneurial sort of communities, many of those at board level haven't got as much of that experience. And so bringing these insights together, I think it's going to be a whole of board and whole of senior leadership and frankly, whole of organization effort, while also being really focused.
No, very well put. And Kate, may I turn to you as we started drifting into sort of the human element and the leadership element and why it's not easy in large organizations. I wonder if you wanted to chip in at this point.
Yeah, I want to highlight Ioannis, Anna Gostakis comment. I love your passion around demanding that the definition of innovation, and you want to require that innovation is something that changes people's lives to the better, not just simply a new way of doing something. So you're focusing on that dimension of innovation that's about people and humanity. And I think that it links to what Fiona was describing around impact. So the question is, what is the point of the innovation that we are working on? Yes, we want to improve our bottom line. We want to improve our financial performance and satisfy our shareholders' needs and demands. At the same time, we as company leaders, organization leaders, have a whole variety of stakeholders to satisfy. So who are those stakeholders? And how do you understand what their needs are? Customers, of course, are the most important stakeholders for companies, but we also have our employees, we've got communities that we're part of, So how can we as leaders think about the impact of the innovations that we are producing so that we can think about our role in a stakeholder ecosystem? And that's not just a nice thing to think about, it's really tied to our business performance. There are huge risks if we don't think about those links to impact in the wider stakeholder ecosystem. And I know I'm singing your tune, Dr. Phil, because every organization is part of a larger ecosystem. And so say if you don't think about the regulatory stakeholders that are in your ecosystem, or the community stakeholders that might put up a fuss around the new innovation that you are about to put out there, if you don't see around the bend and be able to skate to where the puck is, using a hockey metaphor, for those of you who are familiar with hockey, then you're putting yourself at risk. So a recent article by myself and co-authors talked about 4 lenses that companies can use when they're thinking about, in particular, sustainability strategy. And there's a tension that you need to manage between your internal purpose. I saw a lot of comments about the idea of purpose and tying innovation back to what you stand for as an organization. So it's grounding that in your purpose, your why, but then also the external, the stakeholder needs. And so you need to be able to pay attention to both so that you're not whiplashed by all the stakeholder demands that you're facing. You can ground what you're doing in your company purpose. But if you get too inwardly focused, then you put yourself at risk and you're not able to satisfy what all those pulls on your innovation needs are. So I'll hand it back to you, Dr. Phil, for taking us further into the innovation journey.
Well, thank you, Kate. Thank you for picking up on Yannis's question. I think it's a very good one. I'm going to go with that external ecosystem side, because there are external players. And I think Professor Fiona Murray may have just been visited by an external dog popping into screen there. No, this is good. This is all live. But Fiona, I wanted to pick up on the external ecosystem side, because some of the questions out there, before we get into them specifically again, are about why it's happening in certain places and not other places. And so this academy we're going to do in person at MIT to be deep in that ecosystem. So I wonder if you could just share with the participants a little bit about your approach to ecosystems and how you can get competitive edge, which I think is the subtitle of your new book.
That's right, my new book, our new book. So I'm really delighted that the Innovation Academy is going to be at MIT. MIT is a university that's at the heart of the Kendall Square ecosystem, sort of embedded in Boston, Greater Boston and Massachusetts. It's one of, I think, a number of emerging very special places in the world where we absolutely have that confluence of the stakeholders. So to come back to the word that Kate used, which are these external stakeholders we know are profoundly important to really creating places where innovation, particularly innovation right at the scientific and technological frontier, but also some of the digital innovation can really thrive. When we think about the absolutely central role of entrepreneurs, there's people who are often building new ventures to try to commercialize some of that really challenging sets of solutions and matching new problems and new solutions. We think about universities as the sort of fueling that, risk capital, being willing to take the risk to provide some of the early capital. And then the really all important corporations and government. Government can be a big customer, it can be an enabler. Corporations are hugely important as partners in the ecosystem. All of you in large corporations will know you understand the customer often extremely well. You have some of the infrastructure, you have some of that deep manufacturing and production skills, particularly when it comes to some of what I would call the sort of the deep tech, that physical material technology that's so important. And so we find these special places in the world where that innovation journey, the idea to impact journey, can absolutely thrive. And Boston Kendall Square is one of them. Silicon Valley is perhaps the one that people like to talk about most. But we absolutely are seeing this, and I think, Kate, in your work, in our work, we're seeing this all over the world. And so we're seeing that. I was recently in Munich, had a chance to visit the ecosystem there, around Oxford, ETH in Switzerland, and so on. We've been working with folks in Jakarta and elsewhere. And so this is very much an emerging pattern around innovation, and a pattern where we think about bringing the right people together. And these are people who are willing to share resources very rapidly with one another and so on. And so these are special places. And if you're in a large organization, it doesn't mean you should not do innovation yourself, but tapping into the ecosystem can be an incredible source of performance and impact, to use that word.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Fiona. And it's great to hear about the multiple stakeholders in ecosystems, which really separate out the world-class ones from others.
Would you excuse me if I just go let my dog out? He's had to join the LinkedIn Live. If I don't, I'm really sorry.
No, let your dog out.
Thank you.
We'll hold the fort here. Dear participants, as you can tell, this is live and we're very human. This is what the Academy is going to be like. Maybe with dog, who knows? But yes, there are external ecosystem stakeholders. And one of the things we've written about in our book is there's actually competitive advantage for these large organizations for engaging these ecosystems. And Fiona, maybe I can invite you to say something about what they might see and learn here in Boston. And one quick comment. Fiona mentioned Silicon Valley, which is very associated with some digital technologies. Boston has a broader range of technologies. And one of the reasons we want to give you as leaders for innovation, particularly looking at the participant list, many of you with key roles in your organizations on internal innovation. One of the reasons we want people to come and investigate the Boston innovation ecosystem is it's more nuanced than some people realize from the outside, but there could be insights that you could take back to your own headquarters region. So Fiona, would you like to say a bit about the range of technologies, not just digital here in Boston, but others, and what people might see if they come spend that academy with us there in the Boston ecosystem?
Absolutely. And thank you for organizing the academy a little later in the year, so end of April, May, because it means that hopefully we'll have a beautiful sunny time and we will enjoy ourselves all together. The wonderful thing about the ecosystem in Boston is, regardless of the weather, there's so much to see and so many things to learn. I think what I would say is that the real characteristic of the greater Boston ecosystem is we tend to focus on and have a real comparative advantage in some of what I would call deep tech, some of those solutions that are right out on the science and technological sort of frontier. Whether that be in things like artificial intelligence, in the work around hardware for some new sorts of quantum computing. We have a very large group and team that spun out of the university focused on building fusion energy and the fusion energy reactor, which does sound like a little bit of science fiction, but in fact is really moving quite rapidly now towards sort of a commercial reality. And let's not forget that Boston is a place that has absolutely, in a way, had its transformation in the 1980s and 1990s around the life sciences and around companies that were developing new medicines that had a totally transformative purpose. And the headquarters of Moderna is just up the road from us, and a number of the sort of spaces and places that bring this community together, particularly around this sort of technology. And the thing I would say is that you see not just people with those solutions in their hands, but it is actually, again, people who are deeply committed to solving particular problems, for identifying challenges, and for really thinking about the opportunity that these things bring. And so, especially for large organizations, we see that it gives you a sort of a sense of opportunity and optimism, I think it would be fair to say. And it really does remind you to look outside your organization, as well as Kate said, as inside your organization. And people have commented on sort of organization and governance. And in the course, of course, we'll look out and we'll get very excited about what we see in the ecosystem. But we will really spend, I think, considerable time, Phil, in the way that you've designed the program on understanding the internal challenges, the things that make it hard, particularly inside large organizations. I think it's particularly challenging today. And so this is a really good time for us to be doing this.
Excellent. Fiona, thank you for that. And I think we have you for about another 10 minutes. So if anybody has questions, particularly for Professor Dame Fiona, please flag them up in the chat with a Fiona at the beginning. And I just wanted to pick up on that. No, A, it's going to be a great time of year to be in Boston. But B, it's useful to look out at the deep tech horizon. A lot of people were a bit flat-footed when Gen AI hit in the last 2-3 years. And so that is now something that is affecting business as usual. But if one had been looking out at the horizon, one might have seen that coming. And so while we'll certainly talk about how to cope with Gen AI and how that can help you with some stages of the innovation process, it's also important to be looking a few years out, as Fiona was saying, to the next horizon. What's coming and how could that change things? Because the future is already here, it's just not evenly distributed, to quote William Gibson, the cyberpunk writer. And MIT is one of those places on the planet, you probably have a few close to you, where you can glance out at that horizon and just be a little better prepared as an innovation leader in your organization. So Fiona, are there any questions that have cropped up that you particularly would like to address before we lose you?
Absolutely. So Hasib, I think, has an important question. He says, how is innovation and entrepreneurship related within organizations? And so Hasib, I think that's a very fair question. And it reminds us that there are a lot of buzzwords. You could have said, how is innovation and hackathons connected, or accelerators? The way that I think we talk about this and understand this is that as a leader in an organization, you're going to have to think about, what is the goal? Why are we allocating resources, whether that be money or time or frankly attention, which is perhaps the thing that we have least of these days in our organizations, to innovation. So trying to solve new problems with new solutions, new problems with existing solutions, and so on. How much time and energy are we going to put into it? What is our portfolio going to look like? So how much of that are we going to do to make incremental improvements versus things that we think could have a transformative impact on our organization and on our customers and our stakeholders? Particularly as we try to do things that are further away from what we're really good at as an organization, we're going to sort of stretch towards new types of solution space, or we're going to really understand new sorts of problems that we've never tried to solve before. We know it's incredibly important to look internally and to try and find those individuals who have the skill sets. And so we know that there are certain types of mechanisms internally that can help us structure and govern the innovation. Of course, we want people to have their ideas, but we absolutely have to put sort of structure and process. And most organizations, when they talk about entrepreneurship, talk about giving people internally the latitude of action to develop their ideas into sort of proto projects, if you like. We sometimes call them proto ventures. We also need to align that with what we're doing outside. And so we might decide to put into place a corporate venture fund to let us invest in some of the ideas we're seeing bubbling up in the ecosystem, to make equity investments. Or we might run an accelerator jointly with the outside. And so we'll go through all these mechanisms. They're simply mechanisms to try to put some structure and governance around innovation. And they should be done in an integral way as part of the portfolio of efforts. And it's incredibly important in our experience, and in my experience, that our organizations, we know what everyone's up to. We don't have to control everything, but having a view across the portfolio will allow our organization to be much, much more effective. It'll also allow us to kill some projects and to really grow others, because our resources are limited. And so that's incredibly important.
Excellent. Thank you for that. And Fiona, I saw a question in there from Rehan, which I think draws on your work with emerging markets as well. So I don't want to keep you on too long, but there's a question in there about, can you produce innovation through its culture also for SMEs in emerging markets? And my sense is, yes, I think this academy could be useful to people, not just in emerged, but also emerging markets, not only in large organizations, but SMEs. But given your leadership role as faculty director for MIT's Center for Entrepreneurship and Development, I wondered if I could entice you to speak to that.
Yes, of course. I mean, I've mentioned ecosystems across the US and Europe, but it's also absolutely the case that we're seeing very vibrant innovation ecosystems emerging, all across the many, many growth markets in the world. And so, we've spent time in Rio looking at what's happening there, in Cairo, in Lagos, in Abuja, Accra, and elsewhere. We're working with a group from Botswana at the moment. And then, we've also recently spent some time in Riyadh and Dubai. And so we begin to see some of these places in the world really developing innovation and really shifting away from only focusing on small businesses, which are very important in all of our economies, but to actually using digital tools to massively upskill and amplify the productivity of those organizations. And we're starting to see those sort of innovation-driven enterprises. Sometimes I think of it as the Uber 4, companies like Careem and others, or Grab in Indonesia, who really are very high growth businesses creating jobs. And particularly because this digital technology is perhaps easier to access, we absolutely see brilliant examples of that. But I would also say that we are meeting and supporting entrepreneurs who are working further towards deep tech. So whether it's in mining or infrastructure, and absolutely asking the question, how can we reinvent some of the solutions to the huge infrastructure needs that countries need? Can we do that in a more entrepreneurial way that allows for growth and that allows for sort of resilience? And these are questions I think are on everybody's mind at the moment.
They certainly are. And talking of questions, what amazing questions from participants. I'm really excited to get into those in the next half hour, particularly on the human side with Kate, but also I hope the participants who actually come to the In-Person Academy, it'll just be so much more fun to be in person and able to discuss these. Fiona, I know you need to roll off soon. I don't know if you wanted to make any concluding remarks or address any more questions.
Gosh, there are so many. I'm hoping that our team can actually capture them and share them with us, because it gives us, I think, a tremendous amount to think about. So I think, Chin, you ask, you say many organizations, bureaucracy, slow decision making, and strong risk-averse mindset can hinder innovation. And yes, we often blame the poor middle managers for that. And so I will perhaps, at some moment ask Kate and Phil to talk about that. What I would say is that, look, in large organizations, it's extremely difficult to align a large organization to get this innovation sort of job done, particularly because it's risky. Right? If we knew exactly how something worked and what a customer wanted, we'd have done it already, and we would call that business as usual. And so every time we do an innovation project, we hold certain kinds of risk. Right? We have risk in the solution space and risk in the problem space about our understanding of customers and value chains and so on. So I think what we see is we know we need structures to organize the work. People need to know who's responsible and who isn't. Innovation shouldn't, in my view, be an edge of desk activity. Some people need to actually be responsible for delivering on those things. But we also need to recognize the politics and the networks that exist in organizations. That when we work in medical organizations, we know if those on the sort of nursing staff come up with ideas, they're not always welcomed by the physicians. And we need to think about the power balance and make sure that we have the ability to hear from people with different kinds of experiences. And then lastly, I think, this is where Kate and others at MIT have thought very, very deeply, is about the culture. What is the culture of innovation that supports us doing something new, as opposed to simply always saying we've done it, like we've tried that and it didn't work. The last thing I'd say in all of those three, the sort of structure, the networks, and the culture, is that it is about amplifying the innovation and making it easier. But if we're going to do that, we also have to be really good at stopping things, because otherwise we're going to start many, many things. It'll be like spinning lots of plates, and we won't have the resources. They'll all just sort of go along being tiny projects, like little shoots. And at some point, we've got to decide which ones we want to nurture and grow, because we have to move our resources to those things. We have to gear our organization to be able to scaling the innovation that we do. Otherwise, it's just a pet project. And that, I think, is actually the hardest thing, is how do we stop the things that we think aren't working and really push our resources into the things that we do. So we need an effective pipeline to make that work well. And that, I think, is actually one of the hardest things for organizations to get right.
Oh, excellent. Thank you for that. And I'm really looking forward to having you at the In-Person Academy at the end of April, when we will be producing our book. And are you okay if we sign books there for the participants who are there in person?
I think I could be persuaded to do that, yes.
Jolly good. Well, thank you for your time, and feel free to escape when you must, including to let your dog back in. Thank you for joining us. I want to pick up on one of your points there about the human beings in organizations, and that use this as a way to bring Kate back in. We talk about innovation being more than just technology, that it is a process and it needs to take place in organizations. And so, Kate, I wondered if you'd share with people here a little bit more about what you've been looking at in the context of leadership, in terms of how large organizations provide the leadership that creates the space for this innovation.
Absolutely. Much of my work with colleagues at MIT, Deborah Ancona, Lane Backman, and others have focused on how to create an innovation game board in organizations. And we call this distributed leadership. And we have studied many organizations that are focused on innovation, product innovation, process innovation. And what we found is that there are three kinds of leaders in these organizations. And what they do is they take the typical organizational hierarchy that looks something like this, where the smart people at the top of the organization have all the answers. And we're all smart people here on this line, and we drive those answers and decisions down through the organization and expect the middle managers to help the people on the front line move in the same direction. Well, in distributed leadership organizations, that hierarchy is literally flipped upside down. so that the senior leaders become, they're down there at the bottom actually, and they're called architecting leaders. They're designing the game board for innovation. And what are they doing? They're doing a lot of the same things that we think of senior leaders doing. They're creating strategic clarity. They are structuring the organization in a way that works and decreases friction. However, they're doing things in a somewhat different way. So when they create strategic clarity, they're doing a top-down and bottom-up approach. So they're listening very hard inside the organization. And Fiona talked about portfolio and keeping tabs on your innovation portfolio. So they have ways of funneling up good ideas throughout the organization to inform the strategy that they're going to set. So strategic clarity happens bottom up as well as top down. And they're also listening. They're doing that sense making out into the world that Fiona was talking about, and paying attention to changing markets and technologies, and keeping tabs on your stakeholder ecosystem and building those relationships. So the strategic clarity that happens is two-way. And then those architecting leaders help what middle managers, whom we term enabling leaders, because they're helping to enable the process of innovation happening to happen. And they take the organization strategy and boil it down into what Dawn Sull here at MIT and Kathy Eisenhart over at the Harvard Business School, or she's at Stanford actually, I believe, call simple rules. So people can't cognitively process abstract concepts like, for instance, NASA back in the 1960s, explore space and advance science. I mean, that was their strategy. But people can't handle more than about 3 priorities in their head. So, NASA boiled that down into a concrete vision, put a man on the moon by the end of the decade. And so suddenly people could see what that meant. So good architecting leaders help the enabling leaders and then the entrepreneurial leaders in the organization. That's the third level of leadership, to enact strategic priorities by putting simple rules and pictures in their heads so that people know what they're doing when they go out and try to innovate. Architecting leaders are also very focused on culture. And somebody mentioned, Bruce, I think, mentioned the word trust. Yes, Bruce, one of the most critical factors in the effective management of innovation is the level of trust that exists within the organization. And architecting leaders know that the innovation game depends on trust and people's ability to trust the technological innovations that we're driving. And so they focus a lot on explaining why are we doing this innovation? Who is it benefiting? And understanding that the trust is the mechanism that's going to fuel innovation throughout the organization. So they're very grounded in culture, values, being showcasing and living the values of the organization personally, and reinforcing those throughout the organization. Because if you don't reinforce things, basic ethics and whatever the values of the organization are, then people won't get engaged in that game of innovation, and they won't go the extra mile to contribute willingly to the innovation process. So those are a couple of the lessons around the architecting level of leadership. The enabling level of leadership is like the glue that connects and communicates and coaches. Then those entrepreneurial leaders who are on the front line, who are the people who are bringing that innovation to life day by day and providing a lot of those interesting ideas that come from all corners of the organization. You never know where a good new idea will come from. So you want to get the most people possible engaged in innovation that you can throughout the entire organization and outside the organization, and partnerships and other things. So let me stop there and see where you want to dive in next.
Oh, Kate, that was excellent. Thank you for that overview. I'm going to comment on that, but I let you know that I'm going to come back to you on the culture thing and get you to give a bit of an explanation about organizational culture, and is it static or can it evolve? And while you think about that, I just wanted to come in for the audience. This is why I'm so excited to be partnering with Kate and Professor Deborah Ancona. Their model of those 3 levels of leadership really is very powerful: the senior, the middle, the entrepreneurial, but also the fact, as Kate says, you flip that over. And so, the senior leaders need to be architecting the system to have this innovation work. So I'm so excited to have them involved in the academy. And maybe if we're lucky, we'll have them come in and run their simulation, which I know is always fun to have executives try taking this innovation game through their large organizations. But Kate, I promised to come back to you on the culture point. How do you think about culture? And is it static, or is there anything we can do?
So there's a great saying about culture. There's a couple great sayings. One is that I'd like to bust up a couple of myths about culture. So one is, there's this saying many of you've probably heard: culture eats strategy for lunch. So that is actually wrong. I just want to put that out there right now, because culture is strategy. It doesn't just eat your strategy. It actually is your strategy. And so organizations that have strong cultures know what they stand for and are able to enroll and engage their people in living the culture moment by moment have a source of competitive advantage beyond organizations that are not values driven and continuing to build the trust with their stakeholders, starting with their own people. So the second thing that I want to say about culture is that there's a kind of funny saying in the world's the academic circles, which is, if you want to stop thinking, you just say it's due to culture. Oh, we can't do this or that or the other thing because our culture stops us, or etc. And so culture often is blamed as this amorphous concept for why we can't do this, or why this risk taking failed. Well, I think it's important to break apart, what do we mean by culture? And there's, I guess I'm talking in 3 levels this morning. So there's a 3-level model that is informed by Ed Schein, who is a professor emeritus here. He's passed on here at Sloan, unfortunately, but he left us with a model of thinking about culture as there's a level of things that you can see. So people acting in certain ways, incentives, policies. This is a layer of culture that you can see if you walk into an organization. What are the values that are written on the wall? Then there's a deeper level of culture, which is what insiders say about how things work around here. And you find out really quickly how things work if you break a cultural norm. Well, the people who are lower down in the organization do not contradict the CEO around here. That just doesn't happen. So that's a norm that insiders would have to explain. And then there's an even deeper level about what are the underlying assumptions that we have about work, about human beings. So for instance, Douglas McGregor's theory X and theory Y of human motivation. And so those things get into the water deeply about, for instance, do I as an executive hold a command and control assumption about people need to be ordered around? Do they need to be ordered back into the office because that's the way they're going to work best? Or do we trust people and they're going to be, able to work effectively at home? Or do we need something in the middle, a hybrid kind of work arrangement? So those are the deep assumptions about human motivation and nature that we need to pay attention to. So I think if you have a model of what culture even is, then you're in a better position to evaluate it and see where are some levers that you can pull. Typically, it's a lot easier to change structures than it is to try to convince people to do something different, to behave differently. And so I would advise people to start with structural changes and incentives to nudge people into behaving in different ways, which ultimately does change mental models. So, and those are the hardest of all to change. Coming back to your question about, is it static or is it, can we change culture? Culture it's hard to change, but it doesn't mean that you can't change it as long as you know that where to start to intervene and how to diagnose what are the enablers or inhibitors of the change or innovation that you want to have happen.
Oh, that's excellent. Thank you, Kate. And participants, you can see why I'm so pleased that Kate has agreed to help out with this academy. And Kate, I'll turn back to you in a moment, just so you can give participants a bit of a sense of the kinds of things you'll be bringing to the academy, like those lenses and the leadership pyramid. But I just wanted to pick up, Vera Lynn had a great question about philanthropy, and Anastasios nailed it. Yes, this approach to innovation and harnessing the entrepreneurial leadership can be applied to any sector. People often think of big tech in large corporations, but this can also be applied in small enterprises because they're also full of people and levels of leadership and culture, as Kate has set out. But one of the reasons we as a management school, not a business school, talk about impact is we also work a lot with the healthcare sector, all the way from hospitals through to biotech startups. And the same processes of innovation and entrepreneurship matter, whether you're for profit, for impact, whether you're mission driven, whether you're trying to make the world a better place. In fact, it's important to look at those things. So, Chad, we're so pleased that you're finding this so useful and applicable. And people have asked about the book. So we'll put the link to the book, which is coming out on the first day of the Innovation Academy, 29th of April. You can order it in advance, but you can also you can get a hard copy signed by the co-authors, Fiona and me, on the day. But Kate, I promised I'd come back to you as we're in our last 15 minutes or now. What sort of things of all these frameworks that you've talked about there will participants be able to get frontline experience of if they do indeed come to the in-person academy?
Well, you get to hear about the 3 levels of leadership: the architecting, enabling, and entrepreneurial levels of leaders in distributed leadership organizations. And you'll learn a set of practices that those leaders enact in their organizations. Distributed leadership, just like we've been talking about around innovation ecosystems, distributed leadership is a system of leadership that involves leaders, culture, structure, practices, and processes. So you'll get to unpack all of that and understand how you as a leader can start to pull or push on these levers to change the innovation game board in your organization. We'll also talk a bit more, well, quite a bit more about culture, because it is so important. And again, I find that a lot of this talk about culture is just so amorphous. So you'll get some more clarity on frameworks that you can use to tackle culture strategically. We have a lot of good tools to think about strategy and strategic clarity, but we don't have enough good tools to talk about cultural clarity and how to think about that. So I'll talk more about that, and just land some of the simple things that I think you as leaders need to understand when you are looking at the health of your organization's innovation strategy. What should you look at in what are some quick ways that you can get a sense of the health of your innovation strategy? So we'll talk more about that, and I can go into any one of these topics more in the last few minutes that we have, Dr. Phil.
Sure. Well, wonderful for that, Kate. And Kate, do you want to take a glance through the comments? Well, I address one of the questions there, which was about the range. That's from Felix, about radical innovation and adjacent innovation. I just wanted to address that because it's a really interesting question, and different places have different language about it. You know, some people talk about Kaizen, Toyota process, incremental, adjacent innovation. And then the other end of the spectrum is the sort of radical, breakthrough, disruptive. And so one of the things that we try to do in our innovation part of this academy is we've read a lot of the books about this and looked through the practical applications with a lot of our executives that we've taught and those for whom we've done consultancy. And we, not to give too much away, but we put it on a spectrum. And one of the challenges for you as executives and leaders is to work out, when your organization talks about innovation, are you talking about that big eye innovation, the sexy, exciting stuff right out of the horizon, where the startups and the venture capitalists talk about, 10x this and 10x that, which is a very legitimate form of innovation? Or are you at the more modest end of the innovation spectrum, what we call the little I end, that instead of being scary, risky 10x is more like little I 10% innovation, which can feel incremental, and yet you have to overcome all of the cultural and leadership challenges even to get to that beyond business as usual. And that's why, and Kate used the word portfolio, that's why we encourage leaders to come out of the academy with a sense of realistically, what is their particular organization's portfolio? What is the cultural risk appetite? And therefore, for you as leaders, what is going to be the right thing to take forward? Because one of the promises I make is always to give people advice that is not career limiting. So I don't want you to come out of this academy or any of my courses with a sense of innovation objectives that are going to be bad for your career, your company, and possibly your community. I want you to be realistic about where your appetites are within the organization for delivering innovation, and then to start to move that culture and to build the muscles around innovation so that you can do more going forwards. So, Kate, back to you. Did you spot anything in the comments or questions that you'd like to pick up as we move into our last 10 minutes?
Well, I would like to pick up on this idea of the incremental innovation versus really radical breakthrough innovation, and I would advise everyone to check out that spectrum because it's very useful. The one that Phil just described. I think that from a human and cultural perspective, it's very natural to resist radical new innovations for a variety of reasons. One is that often they can threaten the existing business. There's a lot of reasons people will throw up around, well, we don't have the capabilities or the technical know-how. This is new territory. And so this is why there's often so much organizational resistance to that radical innovation, which is why those need new, different kinds of models. So the original Skunk Works at Lockheed Martin was called that because you have to separate and protect those new ideas from the organizational inertia, and every organization finds this. So, or have partnerships or other ways of supporting that kind of radical innovation because it's just human nature for a lot of reasons. People are afraid of uncertainty, the unknown, and well, this way of doing business has worked for us so far, and we're doing pretty well. So, unless you can create that sense of urgency for why it is that we should do something different, the organizational inertia will push back on you. So, and you have to protect those radical ideas and separate them, and or light the fire under people as to why it is that we should have to change. So we teach executives here at MIT. We're very data driven, but we teach people about storytelling because storytelling is a key leadership skill that you need to be able to create that sense of urgency as to why we should innovate. And that's comprised of two components. One is what is the possibility, the aspiration or possibility or the great new future that we could create if we pursue this innovation or make this big bet, and what's at risk also if we don't. What's the pain that we're feeling now, or that we will feel in the future if we don't innovate and don't move forward. So it tackles both ends of the people. Some people are more aspiration and vision motivated. Some people are more risk focused. You have to be able to speak to both ends of those dimensions of human nature to get anything to go. So let me stop there, see if you want to pick up on any of these other threads.
Oh, well, first of all, that was an excellent answer, Kate, and thank you so much. And you can see how this loops back to Fiona's definition as Dean of Innovation, that innovation is more than just technology. Just because the technology exists, like generative AI, doesn't mean it has immediate impact. And as Kate has been setting out, the nature of these organizations full of people, distributed leadership, understanding how those systems and processes sit is why innovation needs management and needs leadership, because the technology does not instantly apply itself. It needs to be navigated and carefully. So I'm getting increasingly excited about this Innovation Executive Academy, the kinds of things we're going to be able to bring to people. As we move into our final minutes, and Kate, I'll turn back to you for one last round of comments. Feel free to pick up any question that's out there, but also to leave the participants with any final thoughts that you want to from your side. One thing I did want to pick up, it's been a fascinating process of developing a variety of innovation courses leading to this academy. If after listening to us today, you have things that you particularly like to see in the academy, please do reach out on LinkedIn to me. We are constantly innovating and evolving, and with such fabulous faculty as Kate Isaacs and Deborah Ancona and Fiona Murray, in each of our sessions over those 8 days, we're going to be able to pivot to precisely what it is that those who attend the academy really want. One of the privileges of getting to do that in person is we can really customize it to the challenges and the sectors and the geographies of the people who are actually there. It's one of the things I love about teaching at MIT is very practical insights and takeaway frameworks, as Kate was talking about. Oh my goodness, so many questions in there, Kate. Kate, do you want to pick one and then turn that into sort of final wrap-up remarks as well?
Yeah, I'm just scanning through here. Let's see. There's so many great questions.
Really?
I think, I like this question. Is inertia the enemy of innovation?
Yeah, go on.
Um, yes, yes, and lack of direction is also the enemy of innovation. If we don't know where we're going, we don't know what to do, and we can innovate in all sorts of different directions that we may not want to be innovating in. I worked with one organization that was highly innovative and for many years, but they had 3 different customer relationship management systems because they were innovating around things that they shouldn't be innovating around. So I would say that if you have a small amount of time to assess the health of your organization's innovation strategy, what are some of the things that you should look at to reduce that inertia and to free up, create less, reduce the friction where people can step up and create those ideas and bring them from ideation to impact, as Fiona was saying. And I would say a couple of things. One is, do you have that strategic clarity about where are you as an organization playing, and how are you going to win over the next 3 to 5 years? So I really like Roger Martin's strategy cascade. You can just Google it. It's very simple, and it takes you, there's 5 questions, and you have to ask yourself as an organization, do we have clarity in that, the top of the strategy cascade? Because we don't have that clear vision, and we haven't translated into the simple rules that I was talking about earlier. People will be innovating all over the place. They won't know, where are we putting a man on the moon, or are we going to maybe Mars? I don't know. And then I would ask yourself, what are all of the projects that we have killed in the last 6 months, and why? Because just as Fiona was saying earlier, you have to be able to say no. Really high innovation organizations are really good at taking their strategic clarity, how they're going to win, understanding their core capabilities, of which culture is a key capability, and then being able to say no to a whole bunch of stuff so that you can say yes to the right things and make those big bets. So I would want to know, what are you all saying yes to? Or are you letting a whole bunch of stuff go on that's not going to get you where you need to go, and make those big bets? And then I would ask, do you as a leader have an understanding of what is in your portfolio, so that okay, we're keeping active tabs on what's going on in our organization, and I know as a leader where the good ideas are coming from all over the organization. So do I have a way of funneling up all sorts of ideas about what we could do, and then I'm able to make some of those strategic bets. And then finally, I would ask 2 key stakeholder questions. So first of all, on the employee side, do people ask people, go and walk the floors of your office or your factory or wherever you are, or maybe your Zoom halls, and ask people, if you had a great idea today, a breakthrough idea, whether it's incremental or radical innovation, how hard would it be for you to get support to take that idea and run with it? Fiona mentioned organizational, resources, money, talent, and attention. Can you get the attention of a senior leader to take an idea and run with it? Okay, so that's on the employee side. On the customer side, how well are you listening to your customers? Do you have multi-channels of qualitative and quantitative data that you're collecting, where you're going out, you're understanding your customers' needs, present and future, not and then you're able to bring those back in and understand where people are now, what they're telling you, and that you can then think about how to meet their needs in the future, so that we're, customers, as the famous saying goes, did not ask for, a faster horse, but how can we see and anticipate their needs, and given what they're actually telling us. So you got to have multiple channels of customer engagement that's quantitative and qualitative both. Ritz-Carlton is a great example of how they do that, bringing those customer needs in and collecting a lot of data. You can go learn a lot about customer innovation through the Ritz, which is an interesting example on a process side.
Well, first of all, thank you for that overview, and thank you for that invitation to go and check out the Ritz. I like the sound of that. It is amazing, Kate, to have you involved with this and co-creating this academy. And once we're all in person, there are going to be many more examples from our real world work and teaching and case studies and consultancy that we can share with people. in a more customized environment. But Kate, let me start to wrap up. First of all, thank you so much for those concluding remarks, and thank you for your contribution to today's session, but also to the Innovation Academy, which is, as of recording today, is only 7 weeks away. So thank you for all your help with that.
Pleasure.
And there are so many questions out there that we would love to have got to. So I'm glad we're going to have this academy where we're going to actually have an opportunity to do a deep dive. Just a couple of final rounding up remarks before I return to Courtney to round us out. First of all, as you can tell, we're excited about this innovation thing. We think it is one of the great differentiators for companies, for your careers, and for indeed the communities in which you are based. We take a distributed leadership approach. So whether you're C-suite, an enabling middle manager for innovation, or an entrepreneurial frontline leader, we believe this will be relevant to you. And we believe in a place-based approach to innovation. And that's why we're going to be so pleased to host you here at MIT. You'll get to see MIT's famous dome, as in the image behind Courtney. You will get to meet startups and professors. Oh, thank you, Courtney. And hopefully by then, the weather will be much better in Boston, so we can take you on walks, because there's something about being in these places and sharing thoughts, not only with us who are teaching, like Kate and me, but also with your fellow executives, that the network that you will build coming out of this. So we're very excited to be running our first ever version of this Innovation Academy and to be producing the book. So with that, let me wrap up and turn back to Courtney.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Phil and Kate, and also Fiona earlier, for taking the time to have the conversation today. Time flies when you're talking about innovation. So I wanted to thank everyone in the audience for joining us for the full hour. I really appreciate it. And if you'd like to dive deeper, like Phil mentioned, we have these folks teaching in the upcoming Innovation Executive Academy, April 29th to May 8th. 2025. So it's a full 8 days. It's 2 weeks. It's happening on campus. So you're in the heart of the most innovative square mile in the world in Kendall Square. So you won't want to miss that. You can go ahead and register on our website, or register your interest, or try to save your seat, as we have some seats left. So it's executive.mit.edu/IEA to learn more. We're also going to put that link in the comments along with Phil's upcoming book. And thanks again, everyone, for joining us. We really hope we will see you in our classroom soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody. Farewell.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for joining us.